Kakadosh Boker Tov, Shavua Tov. We're just going to continue on Pei He Amud Aleph, 85A1. However, we're going to start on Pei Daled Amud Bet on the bottom, just that we would get back into it from Shabbat, where it says Itmar. So we're basically a few lines up where it says it was stated. This was the machloke between Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shimon Lakish. So the machloke between Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shimon Lakish, right, on Pei Daled Amud Bet on the bottom says, Itmar, ever she'en alav kezai basar b'makom zeh. If you have a limb that does not have a kezai basar in one place, yesh alav kezai basar b'makom acher, but it does have a kezai basar in another place. So it doesn't have a kezai basar here, but it's got a kezai basar somewhere else. Okay? Rabbi Yochanan says it has a problem of shvirat etzem, which means you're not allowed to break the bone of this etzem. Why? Because that means even though right here you do not have a kezai, the fact that it has kezai somewhere else, you're still not allowed to break the bones. Rabbi Shimon Lakish says, "En bo mishum shvirat etzem." There's no problem breaking the bones. So the Gemara asks Eitve, Rabbi Yochanan al Rabbi Shimon Lakish, asks Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shimon Lakish, when it says ve'etzem no tishbiru bo, that you're not allowed to break the bones of the korban Pesach, echad etzem sheyesh alav kezai basar ve'echad she'en alav kezai basar, right? Whether it does have a kezait or doesn't have a kezait, this is a braita, and the braita says mefurash that they're learning from the pasuk ve'etzem no tishbiru bo, you're not allowed to break the bones, whether it has a kezait or not. So my en lav kezait basar, it says Rabbi Yochanan, what is the explanation when it says that it doesn't have kezai basar? If you're going to tell me that it has nothing whatsoever, it does not have a kezai basar, why does it have a yisur of shvirat etzem? Right? Obviously, it shouldn't have a problem. Elalav, rather hachi kamar. This is what it means to say. Right? Echad etzem sheish alav kezai basar b'makom hazeh, ve'echad she'en alav kezai basar b'makom hazeh. Whether it has a kezai basar here or it doesn't, the yesh alav kezai basar and it does have a kezai basar b'makom acher in another place, right? Still, you're going to have the problem of shvirat etzem. So this is a question against a shakish. Okay? Amen. So the Gemara answers Amalei. So the Shakish answers Pehe Amud Aleph. So this is where we're starting from, which is basically today's daf. So again, Rabbi Yochanan asked the question against the Shakish in accordance to his shita. His shita was that even though you don't have a kezai basar here, but if you do have a kezai basar somewhere else, and I'm going to break the bone here, you're still chayav. You're still a sur. You're not allowed to break the bones. According to the Shakish, it does not account. Right? There's no problem whatsoever. So says the Gemara, lo. Right? That's not correct. Why? Hachi kamar. This is what it means to say. Echad etzem sheyesh alav kezai basar mibachutz, ve'echad etzem she'en alav kezai basar mibachutz, which means that it has inside basar. What are we talking about basar? Kezai basar is muach. Remember, inside the bones, they have the marrow. The marrow in itself is food. That's basar. That's good. So therefore, when Rish Lakish comes and he says, when that braita says that it does not have a kazait basar, it doesn't mean that it doesn't have a kazait basar here, but it does have it somewhere else. Because then it's according to Rabbi Yochanan. He's correct. No. It means that it doesn't have it on the outside, but it does have it on the inside. And what does it mean on the inside? The marrow, which is inside the how do you call it? Inside the bone. And then you're going to have a problem. That's meat. We said that that's not only that's meat. You could actually count the people on the Korban Pesach on that marrow. Yeah, that was 2 or 3 days ago. Yeah, that is mamash 100% basar according to everybody. That's why we even spoke about that by other korbanot. What the kohanim we used to do was they used to break the bones, because you're allowed to break the bones of other korbanot. And they used to take out the marrow, the moach. That's what it's called, the moach. They used to take it out. They used to have that as the food, and then they used to throw away the bones. Because the bones by themselves are nothing. The bones were only because of the marrow inside that it's a concept of that it has like a kiddusha or it has something because it's meat. So the marrow is meat. The marrow is 100% meat. You see it even until today. How much is, think about it. You go to these places and you're paying a fortune. And what are you getting? You're getting bones. A bone with a little bit of a, but it gives the best taste. It's the best part of and the marrow itself is very, very good. You understand? Call it tuétano. Soul, this, that. In Spanish, it's tuétano. Yeah?
Tuétano, the best.
Yeah, it's the best. It's mamash the best part. Even right now, he's leaving the shiur and he's going with the marrow. You understand? It's the best part. It's mamash. People, and they'll spend a fortune in it. Why? It's the best. It's very, very good. Yeah. Right, the big piece of meat and this and that. It's very, very important. Okay. Very, very good. Let's go. So says the Gemara, V'atanya, we're going to bring a proof to this answer. Right? V'atanya, we learned. Right, but remember, sometimes Ve'atanya is like a bitmiha. It's like a question, right? How could you say that? Ve'atanya, we learned so and so and so. But sometimes Ve'atanya is benichuta. Benichuta means that it's said as a statement, which usually means Ve'atanya is a proof. Because Ve'atanya means we learned in a braita. So therefore, it's a question against what you just said, and therefore Rashi will usually come and he says bitmia, right? Or the Rashi says abayas. Look at Rashi, Vatanya. It's on it's the first wide line. Sorry, the first wide line. It's the last wide of the lines on the top. Rashi says Vatanya benichuta. Sometimes Rashi will bring down Vatanya bitmia, right? Bitmia means it's a tamia, it's a question. Benichuta means you say it, meaning benachat. How do you say nachat? Like slow, meaning there's not a question. You're not challenging. It's a proof. So that's what we're doing here. So Vatanya, we learned in a Braita, right? This is going to be a proof that you're not allowed to break the bone that it has inside marrow. And we do not say that ve'achlu basad and it's going to push off, right? The negative commandment of breaking the bone, which means, right, like this. Think about it. You have a positive commandment, you have to eat the meat. Right? You have to eat the meat. It's a positive commandment. You have a negative commandment, you're not allowed to break the bones. So it's similar to the positive commandment should push off the negative commandment, right? As we were talking about whether it was on Shabbat, whether it was a week before, you should always do that. So it says here, right? Whether it's got a moach inside or no moach inside, it's always assumed to break the bones. Umani mekayem. So how am I going to then fulfill the mitzvah of ve'achelu et habasar b'layla hazeh? Ve'basar shel gabei ha'etzem. We're talking about the meat which is on top of the etzem, but not the meat which is the moach which is inside of the etzem. Or maybe ela bebasar shebetoch etzem. Maybe it's only the one which is inside the etzem, inside the bone. Umani mekayem. So how am I going to be mekayem the mitzvah ve'etzem l'shivru? You're not allowed to break the bones. Be'etzem shemamach, only if it doesn't have any type of marrow inside. Aval be'etzem shesh b'moach, but if you do have marrow inside, shover, you do break it ve'ochel. Ve'al titma. Now don't come and ask sharei yavo aseh v'yidche lo ta'aseh. What? You have a positive commandment. The positive commandment should push off the negative commandment. Says the Gemara, keshehu omer, when it says ve'etzem lo yishbiru bo bePesach sheni, because when it says again ve'etzem lo yishbiru bo in Bamidbar, there it's talking about by Pesach sheni. But you don't need to teach it to you, because you already have it. If by Pesach Sheni it's written that all the chukot of Pesach you have to act, meaning that everything that you do in Pesach Rishon, you have to do in Pesach Sheni. So I go back to Pesach Rishon. What's written by Pesach Rishon? You're not allowed to break the bones. So therefore, why do I have to mention it in Pesach Sheni? It's a repeat. Deja vu. Why? Obviously, if it's superfluous or something I have to learn from it. So if Omer, so therefore we said that the fact that it was superfluous and it taught us an extra time that you're not allowed to break the bones of Korban Pesach by Pesach Sheni, and I already know that the laws of Pesach Rishon and Pesach Sheni are identical. So for over there was coming to teach you that whether it does have muach or it doesn't have muach, you're not allowed to break it. And therefore it comes out that it's muchach from the Braita, that even an etzem that does have muach, you're not allowed to break it. And that was the Braita that we spoke about above. Meaning, the Shakish comes and he tells Rabbi Yochanan, you're trying to bring me a proof from the Braita that we just mentioned on the last Amud, on the bottom, that if it's got a kazait and if it doesn't have a kazait, and the entire concept is that like you, that even though it doesn't have a kazait here, but it does have a kazait somewhere else, you're not allowed to break it. He says, no, really, Be'emet, if it doesn't have a kazait here, you're allowed to break it. What are we talking about? That it's got the marrow inside. Because remember, the marrow inside is a kazait, a basar. That is basar. And that's when you're not allowed to break it. But Be'emet, if it had nothing over here, Rabbi Shaki says, break whatever you want. There's nothing here. There's nothing. Okay? So the Gemara is now going to ask another question on Resh Lakish. Meitvei, now we're going to ask a question from Pesahim Daf, which we're going to learn later on today, where it says like this, Ever shiatza miksato. What happens if you have a limb of the Korban Pesach that only part of the limb came out of the walls of Jerusalem? Okay, now remember, when you have part of the limbs coming out of Jerusalem, what happens is you have to cut off that part. Okay, and then what are you going to do? So it says, you have to cut until you get to the etzem. The kolef, then you have to take off the meat from the etzem, until you get the perek, which is basically the joints, which connects the two parts of the bones. And then you cut the perek, and then you're going to throw out that bone, which means like this, right? You have, it's not good to do it on yourself, so I don't want to show it on yourself. You know, it's not good to, that's, by the way, you should know it's a marasha and everything. When the Gemara says it's not good to show the simanim, whether it's a shechita. Some people, they learn shechita. So also when they come and they start showing shechita on themselves, they say you shouldn't do that. It's not good. It's not good for the mazal. Yeah, that's fine. I'm going to do it on the pen. Yeah, look like this. Let's pretend, or you know what? I got something better. this pen. Why? Right? Let's they're both Parker. They're both just looks fancier, but it's the same thing. No, you're probably right. This might be $1 or $2 more, but okay. Right? Like this. Yeah. I've got, or I'll do it this way, so it's much easier. Okay. They're two different colors, so you could distinguish much easier. Okay. So like this. I've got that this part came outside of Jerusalem. What does that mean? I was coming with the limb, and all of a sudden I stopped. Somebody stopped me dead fast in my path. They told, hey, where are you going? So what's wrong? I'm going home. Yeah, but what type of meat is that? No, Korban Pesach meat. What? Are you crazy? Korban Pesach meat? You just took it out of it. So he said, stop, don't move. They come, they measure. They say, okay, the Korban Pesach meat that went outside of the walls of Yerushalayim is up till here, right? Until this part over here. Say, okay, fine. So now what am I supposed to do? That meat, I have to burn it. I'm not allowed to do anything with it, right? But the rest was still kosher because it didn't leave the walls of Yerushalayim. So what do? I cut off. Says the Braita. Let me read again. The Braita comes and it says, Yatsa miksato. Sorry, there's not a Braita. There's a Mishnah. So we're going to learn later on today. The Mishnah says, Ever sheyatsa miksato, chotech. You're going to cut the meat around until you get to the etzim. So I'm going to take off all the meat. This is all the meat. I'm taking it off. I took off all the meat. All the meat around, I took it off. Now I get to the bone. Okay, now when I get to the bone, ad shemagia le'etzim, kolef ad shemagia le'perek. So now I'm going to have to start doing klifa, which is I'm going to have to start peeling until I get to the joints. What does that mean? The bones, it's not all one bone in the body, because if not, they wouldn't be able to move. Every bone, right, in the body, here you have joints, right? You have the knuckles, right? You have these are all joints, because it's not all one bone. If it was only just one straight bone, you wouldn't be able to bend your finger, or you wouldn't be able to do anything. So obviously there are joints in between the bones. So what you do is you cut off the meat. That's this part. I took off the meat. Now I have right here. So now I'm going to peel off everything until I get to the joint. Once I get to the joint, which is called the perek, chotech, I'm going to come and I'm going to cut the perek. Because again, I'm not allowed to break the bone, but I could cut in the perek. I could cut in the joint. So I cut the joint, and then that entire piece, that means even though it could be maybe until here, meaning that it was a little bit more, it doesn't matter because I'm not allowed to break the bones. I have to come and I have to make sure that I'm taking from the joint. That's actually a very good concept, a good question. Yes, that's what's written. I guess Eli's asking a very good question. Well, I guess we're gonna have to leave this for the Mishnah to see. Okay, let's see if we get to it in Mishnah, but keep it on hold. It's a very good question because he's asking that 1 second that it comes out that you're going to be burning part of the bone, which technically speaking still has Kiddusha in it. Does anybody say anything?
Because of the joint?
Denying. Hold on 1 second. So here it says in the footnote, it says, which is the Tosfot Yom Tov on the Mishnah. Here he says that if it does have moach inside of it, you have to actually burn it. You have to actually burn it. Okay, and then and then you're allowed to eat the basar, which was not niklaf. Okay. No, but it doesn't still 100% answer your question. But okay, let's see. Let's see if we get to it in the Mishnah. Maybe somebody in the Mishnah will explain, even though I looked very quickly, I didn't see anything. But when we actually do the Mishnah, I guess we'll have to look a little bit better. But he's basically just saying it's true. You're actually burning part of the Korban Pesach, right? No, but it's not true because you're not burning the part of the Korban Pesach. You're burning the bone. The bone is not kedusha. That's why. No. So when you're peeling it, whatever you're peeling, that's what I just mentioned. That the part of the peeling, as long meaning even though you're peeling off the meat, only the part of the meat that you peeled off, which was part of the outside, that you have to burn and you're not allowed to eat. But the part which was on the inside that you're peeling off, that you are allowed to eat. So that is no problem. So that's what he says here on the bottom in the footnote, the Tosfot Yom Tov, that if it does have marrow, you do have to burn it. That you do have to burn it. Yeah? Fine. So says the Gemara, now if you're going to tell me ever shenalav kazay basar b'makom zeh v'yesh b'makom acher em bo mishum shvirat etzem. Now if you're going to tell me that right now, if there's no kazait here, but there is in another place, there's no problem of breaking the bone, because that was Shitat Resh Lakish. Remember, Rabbi Yochanan and Resh Lakish were arguing. A bone that right here does not have a kazait, but it does have a kazait somewhere else. Does there have a problem of Shviat Etzem? Yes or no? Rabbi Yochanan says yes, or Resh Lakish says no. So this is the question against Resh Lakish, that he said no. If you're going to tell me no, Lama li de kolef? Why do you have to be kolef until it gets to the joint and cut, and then you have to cut it? Niklof pe purta, be kolef a little bit from the etzem, and now nitperin, now just break it off. Which means, what do we just say? We said you take off the meat, correct? You take off the meat. Now you get to the bone. This is the bone. Yeah, what do we say? Start peeling. Once you peel the entire thing, so the meat that was on the inside part, so that way you peeled off the bone that you're allowed to eat. The meat which was on the outside part, that you have to burn with the... Now what happens? Now that you do that, you have to break it by the joint. If you hold like Resh Lakish, that a bone that does not have any meat, even though it does have meat later on, you're allowed to break the bones. So peel the meat right here. Now there's no meat. If there's no meat here, saw it off right here. Why do I have to peel off until the joint? And then cut by the joint. Forget about the joint. Right now here, there's no meat. I peeled off the meat. So if you hold like Resh Lakish, peel it off. Once this is peeled, cut it right in the middle. I don't have to go until the end. So that's what the Gemara is asking. So the Gemara answers, Abaye Amar, Abaye comes and he says, Mishum Peka. What does it mean, Mishum Peka? It says maybe when you're going to break the bone in the place where you actually peeled it, Tishaber mitachal basar, it's going to go underneath a little bit, which means sometimes you break a bone and it's not like a saw that you come and you saw it off, one of these things that it goes exactly. Sometimes if you break a bone, a little bit more of the bone will break, which is on the inside, which is part of the meat. And there you were just over on Avera. So says the Rashikis, that's why you have to do that. That's the answer of Abaye. Okay. Ravina comes and he gives another answer. Bekulit. We're talking about the thigh bone, which is full of moach. And therefore, it doesn't help to take off the basar because inside it has moach, right? Which is in the place of the breaking. And therefore, because of the moach, which is on the inside, that's why there's going to be the issue of breaking the bone. Because we already mentioned that the moach in itself, which is the marrow in itself, is considered meat. So therefore, you have a problem. Okay? Very good. Now we're going to come. So we just answered two different answers according to Resh Lakish, and now you don't have any more questions against Resh Lakish. So again, it just finishes off by a machloket between Rabbi Yochanan and Resh Lakish. If even though right now you don't have meat over here, but you do have meat in another place, is it considered a problem or not of breaking the bone? Tanan Hatam. Now we're going to another concept, which is basically to do with the eved that went a little bit outside of the mechitzato. So now we're going to say like this. Tanan Hatam. We learned over there in the Mishnah. Okay, this is later on in Kuf Kaf Amubet. Hapigul ve'anotar metameim et hayadayim. So when we're talking about pigul and notar, okay? So we're talking about pigul and notar. Pigul, remember, is what? When you come and you do one of the services of the Bet HaMikdash with the wrong time frame, which means that I was going to do whether it's a shachita, the holacha, the kabbalah, whatever it is, and I'm thinking that I'm going to do one of the services after the proper time, which was allotted to it. So that's called pigul. Okay, not the place. Remember, that's not called pigul, right? We learned that. So it's not in the proper, it's at the proper time. Ve'anotar, leftovers, right? Okay, here it has in brackets satameh. Metamim et hayadayim. It's going to be metameh de hayadayim. Betumah de rabbana. Okay? Rav Huna v'Rav Chasta. According to Rav Huna and Rav Chasta, Chadamar, one of them said, mipnei chashadeh kuna, because of the kohanim chashudim. V'chadamar, one of them said, mipnei atzele kuna, because of the kohanim atzelim. What does that mean exactly? We're going to explain. So the Gemara is going to explain. More matni a pigul, more taught to do with pigul, or more matni a notar, and one of them taught to do with the reasoning because of notar. So let's explain. Man de matni a pigul, the one that learned that this entire concept was because of pigul, mishum chashadeh kiuna, because of the kohanim chashudim to make pigul on the korban, in order that the people should lose out. Which means, because since when a kohen makes pigul, he does not have to pay back the owners, right? Unless it was bemezid. So then, imagine right now you're a kohen, and you don't like Mr. So-and-so because he cheated you out, he didn't give you the proper respect, he did whatever it is. So now the kohen, he's got an incredible vengeance weapon. You know what he does? Accidentally, right? That's what we're talking about. Accidentally, right? He knows that I just brought a sacrifice, and I'm a regular Yisrael. I bring a sacrifice, and this kohen says, who was the one that brought the sacrifice? My good buddy. Yeah, I know that guy, my good buddy. All of a sudden he comes and he says, I'm so sorry, it became pigul. Now, if it was done purposely, he has to pay it back. But he did it accidentally, right? It was accidental. He doesn't have to pay anything back. So therefore, I'll read it to you here. It says, "Alul kohen sheyesh lo eva leploni lefagel et korbano b'mezid veliton she'asa zot b'shogeg," and he's going to say that he did it b'shogeg. So therefore, because of that, גזרו טומאה על פיגול כדי שהמפגל צריך לטרוח ולהטביל ידיו קודם שיגע בקודש, ומתוך כך יימנע מלפגל, which means that basically, right, the kohen, if באמת it would become pigul, the kohen now has to purify himself again. So since he has to purify himself again, so therefore we're going to try to make that in order that he shouldn't do it like that. Meaning, because if not, the kohen is going to think twice. Oh, what? Am I really going to make a pigul? Why? Because then I'm going to have to start again and this and that. I have to purify myself again. Now, technically speaking, right, I thought you were going to ask, big deal. Well, you have to wash your hands again. If you're going to tell me that right now you're going to be disqualified for an entire day, so then, okay, maybe it's a deterrent. What's the big deal? You have to do, again, you have to wash your hands again. What's the big deal? That's what it says over here. It says, so here he asked the question, Tosafot. It says, "V'kasheh arei kohen mesugal lefagel korban b'chavana gam lo yikshosh letumah. Umari lechachamim takanatam. Yesh lomar shefilu kohanim reshaim hayu nizarim bedinei tumah." Right? Basically like this. Something incredible. Certain times, people are susceptible of doing certain averot, but they're not susceptible of doing other averot. What does that mean? You could have, as the Gemara in Yuma brings over here, that you could have people that the Kohanim, that they went and they killed another Kohen. There was a famous story there, right? That they went and they killed another Kohen. They stabbed another Kohen. Yeah. And they went and they stabbed another Kohen and he was dying. And the father went and quickly said, "Get him out of here so nobody becomes tameh." Aywa, they just murdered. What do you care about Tumah v'Tahara? They just murdered. But you see from here that it was more important for them, the concept of Tum'ah, more than what? Than murder. So the same thing comes here and he says they were more makpid, right, on Tum'at hayadayim, that even if they were going to have to come and they have to do, Tum'at hayadayim, then even to come and to cause damage. Because remember, this Kohen is now chayav to the owners because he did it purposely. He pretended it was accidentally. So you're right. So Midinesha, meaning that, in this world, he's going to be exempt. But he'll have to come back in a Gilgul. And he's going to have to pay the guy back because he was obligated for him to pay him back money, right? And he did a whole show. You understand? So therefore, you see from here, the people, they're much more makridim, and that's the normal. And that's why, by the way, in Parashat Mishpatim, it's Min HaShamayim. This is coming out in Parashat Mishpatim, right? That we just spoke about it. The Parashat Mishpatim was so important that we said it was just right after the Masechet Dibrot, and it was the first thing, and telling you the connection, and how the Ben Adam Lechavero is just like Ben Adam Lamakom, and so on and so forth. Why? Because it's coming to teach you that don't ever think that it's only between us and Hashem, and then between our friends, what do we care? The opposite, right? We have to be very, very meticulous in everything that we do between ourselves and our friends. So therefore, he comes and he says they were more machmidim on tum'ah than on damaging their friend. So therefore, they went and they made tum'ah in order that they wouldn't do such a thing. Uman de matni anotar, and according to the mandamar that he says that it's to do with notar. What does that mean? Mishum matzle keuna. There were certain kohanim that they were mitatzim from eating the kochim. So they went and they made a gezerah on tumah notar in order that they would have to come and do it. So that way they wouldn't have leftovers. They would try to eat it as quickly as possible. Why? They would prefer to gain a few pounds than to have tumah. Yeah, they would prefer to eat it. Make sure you eat it quickly. Why? They don't want to be tameh. Right? The concept of tumah v'tahara was so strict for them. They wanted to make sure. So more matni kezait or more matni kabetza. One of them taught that it was to do with the kazait of pigul and notar is mitamim taydaim, and one of them taught it was a kabetza. According to the matni kazait is kisuro, just like the shiur of isur, meaning that whenever we're talking about the shiur of eating is always with a kazait. You want to eat meat on Shabbat, you want to eat fish on Shabbat, you want to eat, all these things. It's always a kazait. You want to eat bread, kadamazon kazait. The mitzvah sudat Shabbat minimum kazait. Kabetza is for netilat yadayim and other things, but the concept is kazait. All right, matni kabetza ketumato. How does it become tameh? For something to become tameh, you need a kabetza. It's not enough kazait. So the one that says that it's already enough for kazait, it's because how much do you have to eat it? But according to the mandama that it says it's kabetza, it's how much is it to become susceptible for tumah. Tumah is only in a kabetza, and that's why netilat yadayim is also kabetza. Right? If you're going to have less than kabetza, right? It's going to be without. If you're going to have less than kabetza, it's without a bracha. Yeah, netilat yadayim mudar beracha. If you're going to eat less than a kabetza, many times this happens in Sudah Shlishit, especially now, especially if you have to eat before mincha, right? So imagine, for example, I give shiur at 4:45, right? So I have to eat Sudah Shlishit at 4 o'clock, right? If you just finish your meal around 2 o'clock, imagine you're eating 2 hours later. Yeah, so it's not that simple, in a sense. So therefore, you have to eat a kabetza. If you're not going to eat a kabetza, fine. Netilat yadayim mutar beracha, and then you eat a kazait, and you did your Sudah Shlishit. You were fulfilled everything. The only thing is you didn't tell them mudar beracha. Okay? So says the Gemara, Ibailehu. So now we're going to ask the following question. Yotze gazru rabanan tuma olo. What if the meat goes outside of the walls of Yerushalayim? Chutz mechitzato. Does, right? So it says over here, by the way, it all depends, but if it's koche kadashim, it's chutz la'azara. Kadashim kalim are outside of Yerushalayim.
אנשים גרים בכל מקום outside of the Yerushalayim.
Exactly, that's why. That's what we say over there in the Korbanot, exactly. So Kadashim is the Azara. Kadashim Kalim is outside the walls of Yerushalayim. So exactly. So the Gemara is asking now, if you did take it out, Kazru Rabbanan Tuma Olo. Because remember, until now we're talking about Pigul and Notar. What about Yetzia? Yetzia means you took it outside of the walls of Yerushalayim or outside of the Azara if it was Kodesh Kadashim. So says the Gemara, Mi amrina notar de gezu tuma dati letetzule be. Do we say by the concept of notar because of atzlut? Aval yotze apuke biyadayim lo bapuke biyadayim. By yotze, when you're taking it out, there's not going to be a chashash. You're going to take it out with your hands, and therefore lo gazer on tuma. Or dinmar maybe loshna. Maybe there's no difference, right? Which means that's the question. The question that we're asking is that since right now, if you're taking it out, you're not taking it out with your hands. So therefore, since you're not taking it out with your hands, we're not going to make a gezerah or not. So Tashema, we're going to try to bring a proof. On the Mishnah, on Amud Bet that we're going to learn right now, it says, Eved she'yatza mikzato, chotech ad shemagia le'etzem. You're going to cut until you get to the bone. Ve'kolef, and then you're going to take off the meat ad shemagia le'perek until you get to the joint. Ve'chotech, and then you're going to cut the joint. V'yamart, and if you're going to tell me gazur banan tuma that the rabbis went and made tuma, ki chatichle, when you're going to cut this meat, mayav, what's the problem? Hakametamele, you're going to make it tameh. Which means that everything now is going to become a subachila. So obviously it comes out that they did not make any type of a decree on the tuma, which is yotzeh, because if the entire body is touching each other, right? This animal, the entire body is one animal. So if you're going to tell me that this part is considered tameh because I took it out, that means the entire thing now is tameh. But we said, no, you cut the joint and then you eat the rest. So obviously there's no tuma here. So that's the proof that we want to bring. So answers the Gemara, it's not a proof. Why? Tumata starimhi. The tumata starim lo metamya. Says no, because the tuma is only on the inside. It's on the inside of the animal. It's tachat or. It's underneath the skin, and therefore, since you cannot see it, tumat starim is not metamya other things. So don't bring me a proof. You wanted to bring me a proof of the fact that you could eat the rest of the animal and you just cut off this part and then that's it. You can't eat that. You have to burn and all the other part you're allowed to eat. It's tumata starim. It's inside. Anything which is on the inside, there's no problem. It's like chatzitza and beta starim. There's a concept about that. Beta starim, right? There's a concept of chatzitza, which means that many times we see that certain things, if it's hidden, sometimes it is a chatzitza, sometimes it's not a chatzitza, sometimes there is a problem, not a problem. So here we're talking about that there's no tum'ah in beta starim. Meaning if it's in a hidden place inside of the animal, there's no tum'ah. Tum'ah does not transfer from one place to another. Okay? Ravina de Amar, and according to Ravina, he says chiburu chalin, that they are connected. Lav chiburu, it's not, sorry, the chiburu cholin, that the connection of the foods are not considered connections. Uchman de mipartam, so it's like it's kilu, it's already separated. Ma'ikal, what are you going to say then? Because at the end of the day, if you're going to tell me now, right, that it's separate, so then it's not considered beta stanim. So what does it help now to cut? Why? Because if you're going to tell me now that they're already considered separated, so now it's not considered anymore beta stanim. Hakanaga badadi, they're touching each other. They come and it's going to be mitameh. So says the Gemara, Ela leman demati kezait deleve kezait, uman demati kabetza deleve kabetza. No, the one that taught a kezait, we're talking about that they didn't have a kezait. The one that taught the kabetza, we're talking about that they didn't have a kabetza. Okay, so Tashema, we're going to try to bring now another proof. Hamotzi besar pesach mechabura lechabura. If you took out the korban pesach from one chabura to another chabura, afal pi shu belotase, even though it's a negative commandment, because it's written that you have to eat it within your own chabura, within your own group. So that means even though you went and you did an avera, right? Afal pi shu belotase tahor, it's still going to be pure. My lover, we're not talking about tahor ve'asur. isn't it that it's pure, but you're not allowed to eat it? Because taking it out from one chabura to another chabura is like taking it outside of mechitzato, right? Umipsil, and therefore it's going to become pasul. We still said it's going to be taor. So you see from here that they didn't make any decree on tuma. So everyone understood the question. Basically, one more time, right? It comes very, very simple. Right now, we are saying that you're not allowed to take it from one chabura to another chabura. It's an avera. And we compare taking from one chabura to another chabura like as if you took it outside of Yerushalayim. Because remember, Pesach is what? Kadshei kadashim or kadashim kalim? HaBechor v'hamaaser v'haPesach kadashim kalim. Kalim. So therefore, it's outside of Yerushalayim, right? If it was kadshei kadashim, which is chatat, olah, sham, then it's going to be inside, which is outside chutz lazara. Okay, but the Pesach is kadashim kalim, so it's outside of Yerushalayim. So therefore, if it's going to be outside Yerushalayim, so therefore, taking from one chabura to another chabura is like taking it outside of Yerushalayim. And here we said it's tahor. That means even though you did the avera, you're not allowed to eat it, but it's tahor. So therefore, just like we didn't, it's tahor and it's not tameh. So too, taking it out of Yerushalayim should be tahor, not tameh. So we didn't make a gezerah. So says the Gemara, no, don't really improve from there. Tahor mutar tiyotze mechabura chabura k'sechus dami velo mipsili. He says no, it's tahor and it's also mutar to eat even. Meaning it's not tahor and it's asur to eat. If you took it outside of Yerushalayim, we don't know whether it's tahor or not, but for sure it's asur b'achila, right? You have to burn it. However, though, over here by taking it out of the chabura, even though you did an isur doraita, right? But it's tahor mutar. It's tahor, and you're still allowed to eat it. So don't compare both cases. V'lo mipsil doesn't become pasul with any type of a tumah. Okay. Now it says over here. Okay, we actually learned it from a pasuk that you're not going to take it from one chabura to another chabura. We're going to learn it now. So says the Gemara, v'hakatani seifa. What about the seifa? The seifa of the right that says ha'ochlo. How can you tell me right now that you're allowed to eat it? The safe of that right that says mefurash, that if you're going to eat this meat that went outside of your group, you're over on a negative commandment. So obviously, if it goes outside of your group, it's like going outside of the walls of Yerushalayim. It's the exact same thing because it's asur. So therefore, when you say tohor ve'asur, so obviously that means also that this case should also be tohor ve'asur because it's the exact same laws as taking it outside the walls of Jerusalem. So says the Gemara, this is good according to the mandamar that says kabetza, right? Why? Di'itba kezait, because therefore the kabetza already has a kezait, and therefore if you're going to eat it, you're going to be over on the isur with eating a kezait. Velepe kabetza, but it does not have a kabetza, right? And therefore it's going to be tahor. But according to the mandamar kezait, Michael, what are you going to say? Why? Because since if you're going to eat it, you're going to be over on a lota said that has a kezait, and still we're going to say that it's tahor. So obviously they didn't make any type of a decree, because that means it comes out that you would have had to eat the entire thing, correct? Because if you're going to tell me that the shiur of tum'ah is kabetza, so it only had a kazait, since it has a kazait and it doesn't have a kabetza, so therefore you're going to be asur to eat it, but it's going to be tahor. But according to the mandamar that it's going to be a kazait, and that means, so then how can you find the case then? Because remember, if it's going to be a kazait, so if it's a kazait, whether it's for tumah or for eating. So if it's a sur to eat, you're not allowed, it's going to be tameh. If you're going to tell me that it's only going to be a kabetza, so then it's perfect. Because to do it tumah, it's kabetza. You don't have a kabetza, you only have a kazait. So what happened? You took the kazait, you ate it. You were over in the isur doraita of eating, right? Because you weren't allowed to eat it, because you took it to another chabura. But it's still tahor. Why is it still tahor? It's only kazait. It had to be a kabetza. But if you're going to tell me it's a kazait, what are you going to say? So says the Gemara, Ela biyotze bePesach lo mibayla. Really, we're talking about that if it goes outside on Pesach, it's not even a question. The lo gazu, we didn't make any tumah. My tama, what's the reasoning? The bnei chabura is rizidhem, because the people which are in charge of the korban Pesach, they're very, very quick. Umazi zideben, they're very careful, cautious, not to take it outside of the mechitza. So what are we talking about? Biyotze bekodshim, on other korbanot which are not eaten in the chabura. My, what's halacha? Do we actually make a gezerah on tumah or not? Answers the Gemara, teiku. We don't have an answer. Okay? Next. Umotzi basar pesach. So now the Gemara is going to say, what's the isur of taking out the basar pesach from chabura to another chabura? Umotzi basar pesach. Yeah, mechabura lechabura. Minayin. How do we know that it's a negative commandment? Pehei amud bet, 85b. How do we know that it's a negative commandment? Tanya was learned to the right. Lo totzim min habayit min habasar chutza. You're not to take outside of the house from the meat outside. I only know from one house to another house. How do we know from one group to another group? Right? Even in the same house. The word chutza comes and tells you that even if you're in the same house, but it's going to be chutza, it's going to be a problem. Chutz lachilato, outside of its place of eating, even in the same house, which means that it's even in the same house, but in two different groups, it's going to be asur. So Amar Rabbi Ami says, Rabbi Ami, hamotzi b'sar pesach chabura lechabura eno chayav ad sheyaniach hotzah, right? Ad sheyaniach. Why? Hotzah ketiv be. Which means, according to Shtat Rabbi Ami, if you're going to take out the Pesach, the Korban Pesach, from one chabura to another chabura, you're not going to be chayav on the concept of lo totzi, right? Lo totzi, right? Because that was the avira. The avira was lo totzi min habayit chutza, right? Min habasar chutza. So it says lo totzi ad sheyaniach, unless you're going to come and you're going to put it in another chabura. What's the reasoning? Hotzah ktiv be. It's hotzah, just like Shabbat. Just like Shabbat, just like by Shabbat, you have to do akira v'anacha, which means you have to take out from one domain and place it into another domain. So to here, you have to do taking out of one domain and putting another, which means you have to take it out from one chabura and place it in another chabura. Which means if you didn't put another chabura, you just took it out and you just put it out of nowhere, you're not going to be chayav. It has to be that you're uprooting it from one chabura and you're placing it into another chabura. So ask the Gemara, Mativ Rabbi Abba bar Mamal, comes Rabbi Abba bar Mamal and he asks the following question: Hayu sovlim otam memotot? They used to come and they used to carry the parim and isafim and sedim and isafim, right? That it was done like their mitzvah. They used to carry them on motot, on sticks, right, on poles, right? They used to come and they used to carry them on poles. Okay, sharishonim yatzu chutz chomat hazara. So that at the time that the first people that they were holding the top of the poles, they went outside of the Azara. The Acharonim lo yatsu, and the other one did not, right? It did not go out. Harishonim metamim begadim, v'Acharonim metamim begadim. So the first ones, they're going to be metamim tumat begadim, right? That means their clothing are going to be impure, right? And the Acharonim, which are the last ones, are not going to be, right? Are not going to be impure. V'Acharonim em metamim begadim. So ask the Gemara, 1 second, the halonach. But there it was not lonach. Meaning, how are you going to come and you're going to tell me that they're going to be, the first ones are going to be mitamim? It was not nach anymore. It didn't rest anywhere. Remember, they have poles, right? And they're going outside, right? So what's going on over here? Now, what I don't understand is that we're not talking about the Korban Pesach, so I don't understand what the question is. 1 second, number 8. These are talking about the chatat u'parimiyot. We're talking about the inner, on the inner mizbeach, on the mizbeach primi, right? On the mizbeach zahav, the golden one, not the copper one on the outside. So it says over here, also these korbanot, is going to be burned outside of Yerushalayim. The second they go outside of the Azara, because we already said these are considered kadasheh kadashim. So that's why it's from the Azara. Okay, so it says over here, fine, and fine. But I didn't understand. So what's now I understood that, because it's also written the word of hotza'ah. That's why I didn't understand what was going on, because I was saying that here we're talking about the Korban Pesach. By the Korban Pesach, it's written lo totzi min habayit basar chutza. So we're learning hotza'ah from Shabbat. Here, this is parim and isafim, sedim and isafim, which is to do with the inner sacrifices. What's the connection that we're also comparing it to hotza'ah, to ilchot Shabbat? And we say, lo nach, it didn't rest. But we're not talking about the Korban Pesach. Well, what's the connection? So now I just saw it, because there also it's written hotza'ah. Right? It says over there, ve'otzi et apar in michutz machane. So since it also says ve'otzi, if you're going to tell me that every single time that it says the word hotzi or hotza'ah, you're comparing it to hotza'ah of Shabbat, so then how could you tell me that you need to do anacha by these things? There was no anacha. They were carrying it on the poles. The first people, the second that they came out, there was an isur. Why was you comparing it to Shabbat? So the Gemara answers, he asked the question, and then he answered it. He says the Mishnah is talking about the parim, which are nigrarim al gabe karka. They were dragging it on the floor. So it comes out that when they were actually being taken out of the Azara, that in itself is already considered hanacha, because it was placed on the floor. That is hanacha. Okay, if they were carrying it, so then there was no hanacha, because it's still in the air. But if it was being dragged on the floor, that in itself is called hanacha. Says the Mishnah, Mishnah Pei Amud Bet. Everyone clear until here? Yeah? Clear as mud? Okay, very good. So, Ever Shiatza Mikzato, right? So this we already did. So this we could do very quick, this Mishnah. An Eved, a limb of a Korban Pesach that came outside of the walls of Yerushalayim. You're going to cut off the meat until you get to the bone. And then you're going to peel all the meat from the bone until you get to the perek, until you get to the joints, right? And then and then you break the perek, you break the joint. Uvemugdashin, now to do with other korbanot, other than the korban Pesach, that a part of it came outside of the mechitzato, which again, if it's kadashim kadashim outside of the Hazara, if it's going to be kadashim kalim outside of Yerushalayim, kotzetz, you're going to cut it with a kofitz, with a garzen, with an axe. She'embo mishum shviat etzem, there's no yisur of cutting a bone. Which means by the other korbanot, what do? You have this, right? Ninja, pa. You cut it, come on, that's it. There's no isur, so you know exactly where it got out to. You cut it with an axe, that's it. There's no problem. Okay, that's what you're supposed to do. That was the Mishnah, right? Sorry, mina gaf velifnim kilifnim. From the gefet delit, which is basically from the doorpost and inside, you're considered inside, and that's where they're going to eat the kadashim kalim. Mina gaf velachutz is like considered on the chutz on the outside, and then you're not allowed to eat the kadashim kalim over there. Okay, ovi, right? By the way, you should know the exact same halachot we were speaking about to do with tefillah b'tzivur. Right, if you're on in the doorpost, yeah. So here it says now chalonot. What about the ovi? Right, we're talking about the thickness of the windows, which means the windows are not a very thin window. You know, like the. Which one? Yeah. So he says over here, right? Usually they're much thicker. Even in the olden days, without hurricane proof, they were always very thick, meaning that it didn't exist that you did a very thin window sill. You know, so everything was always a thick window. Windows were thick. So it says a chalonot, it says over here, the chalonot, ve'ovi chomas, whether we're talking about the thickness of the chalonot of the walls of Yerushalayim, or of the choma, which is at the top, they're considered on the inside. So if a guy is on the wall, right, even though I wouldn't advise the Humpty Dumpty to be on the wall, right, but if he is going to be on the wall, so the thickness is considered on the inside of the wall, and on the inside of the city, not the outside of the city. Okay, fine. By the way, you have a picture there in the art school to do with the door, that seed, which is the, how do you call the turning point? The seed, which is the hinges, and then the gaf, right? That's the, if you see the picture over there, you see it over there? Yeah. Okay, fine. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Yudah Amar Rav, says Rav Yudah in the name of Rav. V'chen letfilah. Baruch Hashem. You see? I didn't know it. Yeah, I didn't prepare. Right? But it says mefurash. Right? What if? So says the Gemara, Amar Rav Yudah Amar Rav, says Rav Yudah Rav. The exact same halacha applies to the words tefillah, which means if somebody is going to be right in the middle of the door, which means you open up this door over here that we have, and you're going to be standing on the door sill, exactly where the frame of the door is. Okay, in the agaf, that's what it's over here. So if you're going to be on the gaf, it's considered on the inside, you're going to be mitzaref to the asara. But if you're going to be outside of the door, right, even though the door is open, you're not going to be mitzaref, right? You're not going to be combining for the minyan. So very important. He says, even if you're going to have a mechitza shel barzel, it's not going to be a sek because everything is galui v'yadua lifanav, and there's no stima in front of him. So according to him, even if you're going to be outside of the entrance, you're going to be mitzaref to the minyan of asara. No, it goes by the face. That's what we learned when we're learning the halacha. Because the halacha brings down in Shulchan Aruch and Siman Nun Hey that even if you put your face in the window, so there's a machloket between the acharonim, is it just enough that you could see my face through the window, or I have to actually stick my head through the window? But the head is enough. And the reason why it's brought down in the acharonim is because the face is where the Shekhinah is. The Shekhinah is shown on the face of the human being. No, probably there you would have to actually be the body or whatever. Yeah, with the face and everything else. Yeah, but here it's probably, we were talking about only the face. Like for example, the window case, it was the face. According to the Halacha Brura and Yaakov Yosef, you have to actually put your face in the window, meaning inside. Right? According to the other shitot, no. And it was a machloket maran, because we had the machloket. For example, right now in the second minyan right now, let's say they only had 8 people or 7 people, because here we're 3 and we're 4 on Zoom, but technically the ones on Zoom don't count, right? But let's say we're here 3 people. Can we just open up the door and they could see us and we could see them and that's it, or not? So according to the Mishnah Brura in Maran, and this is also the Pri Megadim, the Pri Chadash, and Shulchan Aruch of the Balatanya, they learn in Shitat Maran that you are allowed to. Meaning we just open up the door. If we could see them, we don't have to see all of them. We see part of them and they see us, it's already okay. And we answer, no problem. We're counted as part of their tzibur. Yeah, but according to the Halacha Brura and the Yaakov Yosef, they are paskening in Shitat Maran that it doesn't help. We have to actually go outside of the room. So the Mishnah Brura brings down yesh machmirim. Some people are machmirim, right? And then the Biur Halacha later on says that still, even according to him, it's a lechatechila that we should still go outside. So there is a lechatechila we should still go outside. The question is, if we don't go outside, is it okay? However, though, according to the Halacha Brura and the Yalkut Yosef, we must go outside.
Like Zimun.
But
Zimun,
if you're not the same
Zimun is
roof,
not like Zimun, the opposite. They learn like Zimun, the opposite. They learn like Zimun, that's what's meaning. The ones that they hold that it's enough just to see each other, that's like Zimun. That's okay. That's like Zimun.
Oh, yes.
Understand exactly. That means that's like our shita, the one that I told you at the beginning. Why? Because we had this machloka with a bite, and he goes to me, look, and he showed me Yalkut Yosef. I said, I don't remember the halachas like that. So he went and he said, yeah, look, I didn't think so either, but look. So afterwards I went and I showed him Mishnah Brura. And it's a machloket in Shitat Maran. It's not that the Ashkenazim hold one thing and so this is in Shitat Maran. What is the psak? So the Mishnah Brura, the Pri Chadash, Pri Megadim, they were all learning in Shitat Maran. This is how you learn Maran. This is Magen Avraham also. Like I'm saying, all the big guns on Shulchan Aruch. This is how they're learning. The Kaf HaChaim was the first one that he said, no, it wasn't like that. And then Yalkut Yosef and the Halacha Brura, they went after that, and then they continued. Okay.
But you have to be on the same roof, isn't it?
Even if it's the same roof, it doesn't matter. You're in a different room. And even if there's no door, according to the Shita, even if there's no door, not only if the door is closed, but forget about it, the door's closed now.
Yeah.
Even if there's no door, you take away the door. Same halacha. What?
They did have 10 and you're answering here.
No, you are for sure okay. You're always allowed to answer, and you're also considered tefillah b'tzibur. That means that even if they're 10 and you're here, you're considered tefillah b'tzibur. If you could see them, that's for sure. The question is, can they count you as the 10? That's the question. Okay? Fine. So says the Gemara, Hagu v'kasha, this is, Hagu v'kasha, this in itself was a question. Amarta, you just told me, that if it's going to be from the doorpost and inwards, it's considered inside, but the gaf itself is considered outside. But then the seifa, you tell me, from the doorpost outside, you're like the outside, but the doorpost itself is considered inside. So you have a stira. Meaning, in the Mishnah itself, you have, from the former and the latter part of the Mishnah, you have a contradiction. One more time, look at the Mishnah. The Mishnah at the end says, Mina agaf velifnim kilifnim. Mina agaf velachutz kilachutz. So if you're going to stop at each time, if you say Mina agaf velifnim kilifnim, right? If you're going to tell me from the doorpost and inside is inside, so it's mashma the what? Right? That's what he's doing right now. Right? Mina agaf velifnim velifnim. Ha-agaf at small, the actual agaf itself is considered outside. But then the last part said, agaf lachutz kilachutz. So that means that the agaf itself is considered inside. So decide, what's agaf? The agaf itself, which is the middle part, right? Which is mamash, the underneath the doorpost, the door frame. What is that? Is that inside or outside? So it says the Gemara Lakasha, it's not a question. Kam b'sharei Azara, kam b'sharei Yerushalayim. It all depends on the Azara or the Yerushalayim. Why? Sharei Azara, the ovyam, their thickness also became holy with the Azara. And therefore the agaf, that means the underneath the doorpost of the gates of the Azara are considered inside. However, though, the Reisha is talking about Shari Yerushalayim, the gates of Yerushalayim. The gates of Yerushalayim did not become holy like Yerushalayim, and therefore it's considered like the outside. So it's an incredible thing. That means a difference in the doors in itself. Oh, wow. It says here, Rashi explains that during the days of Ezra and Nehemiah, when they went and they sanctified the Yerushalayim, they did not sanctify the Ovia Sharim, the thickness of the gates in itself. Okay, fine. Now, to do with tefillah, there's a machloket. To do with tefillah, it's a machloket. Bet Yosef brings it down. Some people say it's on the outside, so it's a machloket.
Rabbi, question.
Yes.
Usually you see these rooms that they have like separations that you can divide. You can divide with windows or different walls, fake walls. Yes. Does that also count?
Yeah, that could be considered a separation. It could be a big problem, yes. There is a question that we didn't speak about in Halacha, but it speaks about mechitzot. What happens, for example, if we had the mechitzot? Right? Again, if you're on the other side of the mechitza, it could be that you're considered part of the tzibur. The question is, can I count you even though you're on the other side of the mechitzot? For example, let's say you're in Magen David, and it's see-through, so you could see completely through. Or can you count them? And they were putting the elders there. That's a very good question. So that means according to Shitat Yalkut Yosef, you wouldn't be able to. Yalkut Yosef, Halacha Brura. So that means if you had 9 in the regular Bet Knesset, and then you had 1 behind the mechitza, and it's completely see-through, you could see straight through. There's nothing there. Not even everything 100% clear. You would. They're not connected, so it's like breached. They always did that or what? Okay.
All mechitzot are pieces. So when the ladies used to come,
then they close it off. But if there's no ladies, so then they just leave it open. Okay. So then we would have to get into there's also going to be a question, because then that would be considered like the door. Because then it depends if it's going to be more breached than open, or more open than breached. Because if it's going to be more Meaning, if there's going to be more mechitzot than open space.
That's different because you have this whole section completely with seats. And this section you have a walkthrough and now mechitzah here, and then there's no mechitzah there. So this section is open to that.
So meaning that the other section there, so it is open, meaning. Okay, fine. Okay, so if it's going to be open, then it'll be okay. Okay, if it's going to be open. Okay, fine. Very good. So now it says over here like this, because for sure, by the way, with our mechitzot, it probably would not be good, because you cannot really see through. They could see us, but we can't really see them. Because the way that the mechitzot are done is that on this side, it's like a mirror. On the other side, it's more see-through. Like it's just like a darkened type of a thing. So they could, you know what I mean, that the women could see in, but we cannot really see them. Once in a while, depends on the lighting, can you see if you put, you know, your very much, you know, attention. There does exist such a concept, right? But technically speaking, you can't really, meaning if you're far away, usually you won't really, right? Or sometimes you could see a figure, but for sure you wouldn't be able to see faces. Like you wouldn't be able to see anything clear. Okay? Fine. So it says over here, Damar of Shmuel, but Yitzchak says of Shmuel, why was it that they didn't become holy, the gates of Yerushalayim? Because of the Metzoraim. Because of the people that are Metzoras, that they're not allowed to come inside Yerushalayim. Because they wanted to come and get protection in the sun because of the heat, or in the rain because of the rain, which means that they had to be outside of Yerushalayim. Now all of a sudden it starts raining. So now where are they going to go for cover? So they should go underneath the gates of Yerushalayim for cover. Now if you're going to tell me that it becomes holy, that they make it holy, so now they can't go there. So they purposely didn't make it holy in order that they could have this protection. Okay? Also the Shani Kanor was the same thing. Why is it that the Shani Kanor, remember that in the Bet HaMikdash, right? We have to find this paper. Remind me. It was a blue, you remember the blue folder? It had everything, the pictures of the Bet HaMikdash, it had everything. I just don't know where it went. But basically what happened is that that over there it's that the Shani Kanor, which is at the beginning of Azara, also do not. Why? Because of the Mitzorim, which are Omdim Sham. Umachnisim be'onot yadam, and they put in their thumbs, right, in order to get from the blood of the Asham. Meaning that you have to remember that they put on the blood of the Asham on their thumbs, the bo and yadam, right? So therefore, that's what they had to receive it. Okay? You have it on the next page. On the next page, you have Tochni Bet HaMikdash v'Azarot. And I think it's number 5. Yep, Shani Kanor is number 5. Yeah, you see it? Number 5. Or I don't know if you guys have the same numbers. Yeah, it's number 5. Yeah, okay, number 5. No, because I have the numbers and then I have the thing, but I didn't know if it was the same because mine is the Hebrew. Okay, fine. Next, Mishnah. We're in the 2 dots where it's explaining the Mishnah. Hachalonot ve'ovi achomas. So we're talking about the windows and the thickness of the walls, and it's considered like the inside. Amar Rav says, Gagim v'aliyot lo nikachu. Also the roofs and also the aliyot, all the types of the roofs and the second floors in Jerusalem, they do not have, right, the Kedusha of Yerushalayim. That means the Gagin v'aliyot of the Leshakot of the Azara do not have the Kedushat Azara. And therefore, you're not allowed to eat Kadashim Kalim on the roofs of Yerushalayim, right? And they don't have the Kadashim Kadashim, right, also of the Azara, in the Azara. I mean, you can't. Why? Because it doesn't have the same Kedusha. Okay, so any is it so? Ve'amar of Mishum Rebichia, says Rav Nim Rebichia, Kezeta Pischa ve'halela, Kazaita the Korban Pesach, and the call of the Hamon, that they read the Hallel after Achilat Pesach, right? Paka Igra, right? It breaks the Gagot. That means basically what happened was that they were actually having a Kazait of the Korban Pesach and also the call of the Korban Pesach, the Hallel. Hallel as the Hallel. So it was like breaking all the roofs. So it's much from here they were doing these things on the roof. So how could you tell me that it wasn't holy? It was holy. Look what they're doing on the roof. So Peivav Amud Aleph says the Gemara, "My love, the Achli Beigra." We're not talking about that they're eating on the roofs. The Amri Beigra, and they're saying the Hallel on the roofs. And so the Gemara, no, the Achli Ba'ara, they're eating on the floor. The Amri Beigra, but they're saying the Hallel on the roofs. Meaning they used to go to the roofs in order to say the Hallel, right? So they used to go up to the roofs to say the Hallel. However, though, they actually used to eat on the floor. They wouldn't be able to eat on the roof. So the roofs, they didn't have Kedusha, but they used to actually say the Hallel on the roof. So the Gemara says, is it so? But now we already learned. What does that mean? Once it comes the time to finish a Seudah after the Korban Pesach, right? Any they wouldn't be able to go from one Chabura to another Chabura. So says the Gemara, that's not a question. During the time of achila, they're not allowed to go to another place. But once they already finished the achila, and that's kriyat halel, is already after you've eaten. Once after you've eaten, you're allowed to go from your place, and therefore there's no problem. Because now we're not going to suspect that you're going to start eating the korban pesach in another place. So because of that, there's not going to be a problem. And then we're going to continue asking of the tashema, right, of the differences as well. Okay.